Welcome back to the place where we untangle the breathless knots of destiny and human nature. Do you believe in the cruel irony of fate? Imagine two people who love each other to their very core standing, just an arm's length apart, brushing past one another in the hustle of life, yet remaining total strangers. While Toan is straining under the weight of heavy sacks just to earn a few meager coins, diem, his wife, who has been desperately searching for him, is quietly picking up pomelos right beside him. A chance touch, a familiar scent drifting in the air. Will their hearts recognize each other before the shadow of assassins closes in? But the real horror begins when a simple meal is served at the old lady's house. That's when the men in black surround the remote stilt house. The deadly secret inside the music box has leaked. The boss has surfaced, and his goal isn't just to destroy the evidence. It's to wipe Toan off the face of the earth. How will this tear-soaked love story end? Will Toan run to protect his wife, or will he step into the light to face death head-on? Don't take your eyes off the screen. The shocking truth is about to be revealed. Smash that like button right now to support Toan and diem. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the heartbreaking reunion and the life or death showdown with the underworld. Let's dive in. Dawn in the Highlands doesn't break with a burst of light. It starts with a silvery gray mist clinging to the stilt houses. Toan woke up just as the wild roosters finished their second round of crowing. He looked over at diem, still buried in an exhausted sleep after a long, chaotic night. Even in sleep, her face was etched with anxiety. Toan gently brushed a stray hair from her forehead, whispering to himself, "I won't let you suffer another day." Even though the memory of the boss and the hard drive haunted him like a ghost, Toan faced a more immediate problem: survival. Mr. Long was kind, and the old lady was generous, but Toan refused to be a burden. He needed money, not just to get by, but to prepare for the long war ahead, one he knew would be both costly and dangerous. Putting on Mr. Long's worn-out work jacket, Toan quietly slipped out of the farm while the mist was still thick. He walked down the red dirt road toward town. His goal was the wholesale market, and the roadside lumber mills the only places where a man with no papers and no past could find work on the spot. The small town greeted him with the roar of truck engines and the heavy smell of diesel. Toan stopped in front of a warehouse where agricultural goods were being loaded. Crates weighing hundreds of pounds were piled high on 15-ton trucks. "Are you hiring?" Toan approached a middle-aged man with a weathered, sun-darkened face who was holding a clipboard. The man looked Toan up and down his eyes, skeptical. "You look like a city boy. Can you handle heavy lifting? We don't have room for tourists here. We move dozens of tons a day." Without a word, Toan walked over to a 130-pound sack of corn, hoisted it onto his shoulder with a sharp flick of his back, and stood firm. "I can handle it. Look, just give me a trial shift. If I don't pull my weight, you don't have to pay me." The foreman gave a brief nod, signaling him to get to work. That was the moment Toan stepped into a completely different world. A world of salty sweat and the grueling grind of pure manual labor. By 10:00 a.m., the scorching sun began to beat down on the warehouse's corrugated tin roof, baking the air inside until it was stifling. Huyen felt like thousands of needles were piercing his shoulders. Every step up and down the truck's wooden loading ramp made his leg muscles tremble violently. He was an architect by trade. His hands were used to holding pens and clicking mice, not gripping rough burlap sacks until they bled. But strangely, amidst the physical agony, Huyen's mind became sharper than ever. Each sack he hauled felt like a piece of the responsibility he had to shoulder to make up for his past mistakes. "Hey kid, take a break and have some water," a co-worker named Hung the Bear said, handing him a grimy plastic mug. "You don't look like the blue-collar type. How'd you wind up drifting out here?" Huyen took the mug and downed it in one go, feeling the cold water rush down his parched throat. "Everyone hits rock bottom eventually, man. I just want to earn enough to help the old lady and take care of my wife." Hung slapped Huyen on the back with a hearty laugh. "Good on ya. Everyone here's got a sob story. Don't overthink it. Just work hard, and you'll get your cold, hard cash at the end of the day." Hung's words made Huyen realize a simple truth among these poor laborers. Kindness didn't come in fancy words. It was found in the shared empathy of those who struggle. They didn't care who he was. They only cared if he did his fair share. In the afternoon, while moving the last few crates of timber, Huyen suddenly froze. Across the street from the workshop, a black sedan with tinted windows was parked silently. His survival instinct, honed from being hunted, kicked in. Huyen's eyes turned cold and sharp. He pretended to lean down to tie his shoelace to keep watch. How long had that car been there? Was it one of the boss's men, following the trail of Officer Nam or Mr. Thu to find him? Or was it just a coincidence? Fear crept into his heart. But Huyen quickly composed himself. He knew he couldn't run anymore. He kept working, but every movement was now charged with high alert vigilance. He realized that no matter how many sacks of corn he hauled, or how much sweat he poured, that dark world wouldn't let him go. To protect the old lady Mr. Long and diem, he couldn't just be a laborer. He had to be a warrior. At the end of the shift, Huyen received 200,000 AUs VND, his first real wages after months of amnesia. Holding the sweat-soaked bills in his hand, he felt they were more precious than any $1,000 architecture contract he'd ever signed. On the way back, he stopped by a small grocery store to buy some good pork, a carton of milk for the old lady, and a simple hair clip for diem. When Huyen's silhouette appeared at the top of the farm slope, diem was already there waiting. Seeing him covered in dirt, his shoulders raw and bruised, she couldn't hold back her tears and rushed to throw her arms around him. "Where have you been all day? Why are you doing this to yourself?" Diem sobbed. Huyen smiled, gently stroking his wife's hair. "I went to find myself again, Diem. I want to support our family with my own two hands. I'm okay. It hurts a little, but my soul feels lighter than it has in a long time." Dinner that night at the old lady's and Mr. Long's house was warmer than usual. There was caramelized pork, a refreshing bowl of wild vegetable soup, and the constant hum of cheerful conversation. The old lady looked at Huyen, her clouded eyes sparkling with joy. "Huyen is truly back. Our ancestors have blessed him with strength." Late that night, while everyone was fast asleep, Huyen sat on the porch with Mr. Long. Under the pale moonlight, Huyen pulled out the old music box diem had given back to him. "Mr. Long, do you know anyone around here who's good with electronics or machinery?" Huyen asked quietly. Mr. Long took a long drag from his water pipe, eyeing the music box. "There's Def Tam down in the district town. He used to be a top-tier electronics tech, but he's a bit of an eccentric old grouch." "Why is that thing broken?" Huyen shook his head. "No. There's something inside this that could save lives, but it could also get a lot of people killed. I need to open it safely without damaging what's inside." Mr. Long caught his drift and didn't pry further. He knew Huyen was preparing to step into a dangerous game. "I'll take you there tomorrow. But Huyen, listen. No matter what happens, don't forget how it felt to earn those 200,000 dong today. That is your real life. As you can see, Huyen has chosen to face reality through honest hard work. He's no longer the flashy architect. He's a man striving to protect his family in the smallest of ways. However, the mystery black car and Hung the Thug's threats are still looming. Does the music box hold a secret powerful enough to topple an entire criminal empire? That morning, the highland sky hung low, with gray clouds signaling the arrival of the cold winds. At Mr. Long's farm, the atmosphere was no longer quiet. To share the burden with Huyen and to distract herself from her constant anxiety, diem pleaded with Mr. Long for a job. "I can't just sit here and wait for him to come home every night with his shoulders bleeding." Diem said, her eyes resolute. Mr. Long looked hesitantly at the girl's delicate hands, then sighed and pointed toward the pomelo orchard on the other side of the hill. "Fine. Go help the women over there. Pick up the pomelos, sort them, and bag them. It's lighter than hauling sacks, but it requires a lot of attention to detail." And so two people deeply in love, two souls who had just found each other after the storm, stepped out into the world once more to face reality. They went their separate ways, but with a single purpose: to survive for each other. Mr. Long's orchard was massive, the trees heavy with golden fruit in the early sun. Diem's workday began before the sun was even fully up. Wearing a coarse cloth apron, her small hands carefully gathered the fallen pomelos, or those just harvested, wiped away the dust, and sorted them into burlap sacks. Each round, heavy fruit made Diem's wrists ache after just an hour. But she didn't complain. Every time she felt like stopping, the image of Huyen's sweat-soaked back from the night before flashed in her mind, giving her strength. Diem touched the wedding ring hanging from the necklace around her neck and whispered a prayer. "Please stay safe. As long as we try together, tomorrow will be different." The chatter of the local women around her seemed to fade into the background. Diem was living in her own world, a world of waiting and hope. She had no idea that at this very moment the husband she loved so dearly was just a stone's throw away, separated only by a chain-link fence and piles of heavy cargo. On the other side of that fence, at the loading zone and warehouse, Tone was straining under the weight of heavy sacks. Today, the warehouse just landed a huge order. Hundreds of sacks of corn and pomelos had to be loaded onto trucks to make the shipment south. Huyen was a far cry from the clean-cut man he was just yesterday. His face had darkened under the sun, and his deep-set eyes were fixed with raw determination. He hoisted a heavy sack onto his shoulders, taking heavy, deliberate steps across the shaky wooden plank, connecting the ground to the truck bed. The shouting of drivers, the roar of engines, and the clanking of iron chains created a chaotic symphony of hard labor. "Move it, boys. These trucks need to be on the road by 10. The foreman barked. Huyen wiped a bead of sweat that was stinging his eye and blurring his vision. Suddenly, a familiar scent drifted through the air. Not the smell of diesel or road dust, but the subtle fragrance of pomelo mixed with a hint of locust fruit shampoo. He froze for a split second, glancing toward the distant orchard, but another sack was dropped onto his shoulders, slamming him back to reality. Near noon, a truck loaded with pomelos from Mr. Long's farm backed into the yard for offloading. Diem and the other women were ordered to follow the truck to help tie the bags and do a final count. Diem hopped down from the cab, a checkered scarf wrapped around her head to block the sun, her face smudged with dust. She stood by the pile of sacks, clipboard in hand. Less than 15 feet away, Tone was doubled over, lugging a massive bag of fruit off the ground. Right then, a sack next to Tone tore open, sending pomelos rolling across the floor. Tone scrambled to grab them. Seeing this, Diem, acting on a gardener's instinct, knelt down to pick up the ones rolling toward her. Tone's hand and Diem's hand touched the same fruit at the exact same time. A jolt of electricity shot up both their spines. For a heartbeat, time stood still. Tone looked up, but the harsh glare of the sun behind Diem blinded him, and her scarf obscured her face. As for Diem, all she saw was a man covered in grime, his hat pulled low, his frame lean but rugged. "Thanks," Tone rasped, his voice raw from dust and thirst. Diem flinched. That voice, it was hauntingly familiar. She was about to call out, "Tone!" But at that exact moment, a truck horn blared deafeningly. Another laborer slammed into Tone's shoulder, making him stumble. "What are you standing around for? Get out of the way!" Tone quickly grabbed the bag and hurried toward the truck. Diem stood there, frozen, her eyes following that tall, thin silhouette. She wanted to run after him, but the pressure of the job and the chaotic crowd of workers held her back. She tried to steady herself. "I'm just missing him too much. I'm seeing things. Tone is back at the farm doing much harder work. There's no way he'd be here." They passed each other like total strangers in a dust-choked construction zone. Fate had brought them within inches of each other, allowed them to touch, only to cruelly pull them apart with the weight of survival. By high noon, the morning shift ended. Tone slumped against a warehouse wall, his hands shaking as he held a piece of dry bread. He looked at his palms. New calluses were already starting to form. He thought back to that moment he touched the woman's hand. Why had his heart raced like that? Why did that scent make his chest ache? He had no idea that on the other side of the truck, Diem was sitting in a daze. She stared at the pomelo she had just picked up as silent tears began to fall. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She felt a pang of heartache for the laborer she'd just met, and even more for her own husband. She realized then how many people in this world have to trade their raw strength just to survive. The afternoon shift grew even more brutal. Tone hauled cargo until he felt like his spine was about to snap. Diem picked pomelos until her fingers went numb. But neither of them gave up. They were fighting for a future where they could stand together in the light. No running, no hiding, no fear. As the sunset stained the valley deep red, Tone headed home, his face exhausted, but his eyes gleaming with a quiet joy. In his pocket was his meager pay, but to him it carried the heavy weight of love. Back at the stilt house, Diem had arrived first. She had washed up and changed into clothes that smelled of fresh sunlight. Seeing Tuan, she ran to him. She didn't ask questions. She just gently massaged his stiff, aching shoulders. "You worked so hard today, didn't you?" Diem whispered. Tuan took her hand and pulled her down to sit on the steps. "I'm fine. What about you? How was the orchard? Are you exhausted?" Diem smiled, hiding her swollen red hands behind her back. "I was just picking fruit. It was easy." "Oh, but at lunch, I met someone. He looked so much like you. For a second, I thought if it really were you doing that kind of work, it would break my heart." Tuan stayed silent. He didn't tell her it was him. He wanted to keep that pain to himself, to be the solid wall she could lean on. He kissed her forehead softly. The scent of pomelo drifted between them again, warming the cold night air. Fate truly has a twisted sense of humor. Tuan and Diem touched in the middle of a chaotic world, yet couldn't recognize the one they loved. Their silent sacrifices for one another are heartbreaking. But the biggest secret still lies ahead. That mysterious black car has appeared at the warehouse, and it seems the hunters have finally picked up Tuan's scent. Sunset in the highlands isn't a brilliant gold like in the plains. It's a deep, haunting purple that drapes the distant mountains in a ghostly mist. After a grueling day at the warehouse, Tuan trudged along the trail, leading back to the old lady's house. His shoulders were heavy, not just from the lingering weight of the heavy sacks, but from the fragmented memories that kept rushing back after that fateful touch at noon. As Tuan was leaving the warehouse, Diem was finishing the final count of the fruit bags behind him. She stood up, brushing the dust off her worn shirt, her eyes absent-mindedly following a truck as it pulled away. The wheels of fate seemed to be playing a game of hide-and-seek. While Tuan took a shortcut through the forest, Diem's truck was driving along the main road just below. They were only a few hundred yards apart, sharing the same air and the same longing, yet separated by the thick forest canopy and the cruel timing of destiny. Sitting in the back of the truck, Diem watched the last rays of sunlight fade from the treetops, a restless feeling rising in her chest. That touch at lunch. Why is my heart still racing, she wondered. She had no idea that if she had just hopped off the truck a minute sooner, or if Tone had slowed down just a little, their reunion wouldn't be a dream. But no fate wanted them to walk through the depths of hardship, to truly understand the value of the day they finally find each other. Back at the old lady's house, Tone didn't allow himself a moment's rest. He saw her struggling in the vegetable garden, her legs clearly aching. Without a single word of complaint about his own exhaustion, Tone tossed aside his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and dove straight into the unfinished farm work. "Is that you, Tuan? Why don't you take a breather? You've been working all day," the old lady said, with a toothless smile, her eyes filled with pity for this son who had practically fallen from the sky into her life. Tuan gave her a gentle smile, his hands already covered in mud as he began digging new furrows. "I'm strong, ma'am. A little extra movement helps stretch the muscles. I'll sleep better tonight." While his hands worked rhythmically, Ton's mind drifted back to the orchard. That scent, that feeling. It was so real, he could still feel the warmth lingering on his fingertips. He wondered who was that woman in the scarf. Why did her eyes, even in a fleeting glance, seem to hold an entire ocean of sorrow and hope? Fate has a cruel sense of irony. The person he longed for every night was the very person he had just met. Yet the exhaustion and the grime of survival had blinded them both. At the same time, back at Mr. Long's farm, diem had returned. She didn't go straight to her room, but stood by the fence, gazing toward the old lady's house across the hillside. The oil lamp there had just been lit, flickering weakly in the wind. She saw the silhouette of a man toiling in the garden. Because of the distance and the encroaching darkness, all she could make out was a tall, thin, hard-working figure. Mr. Long, does Toan usually help the old lady with the garden at this hour? Diem asked, noticing Mr. Long smoking on the porch. Mr. Long nodded. Yeah, he's a good kid. Highly devoted. As soon as he's back from his day job, he's right back at it helping her. Hardly ever see him rest. He says he wants to repay her kindness, but I think he's just trying to outrun something in his mind. Diem let out a long sigh, her heart tightening. She wanted to run over there right then, to throw her arms around him to find out if the laborer from noon and the man digging the earth were one and the same. But her father's caution and Officer Nam's warnings about strange faces made her hesitate. She didn't want a moment of impulsiveness to blow his cover and put everyone in danger. That night, in the small room of the stilt house, Toan lay awake. The purple bruises on his shoulders from the pomelo sacks began to throb, but the pain in his head was sharper. Every time he closed his eyes, the image of the music box and the face of a woman, clearer this time, flashed before him. It was the girl from the warehouse. The realization made him bolt upright. It can't be a coincidence. That scent. It was her. Toan stepped out onto the porch, looking toward Mr. Long's farm. The bright moonlight illuminated the path between the two houses. He wanted to run to her immediately, but his feet froze. He looked at himself, a man with no papers, a man being hunted, a man who had just spent the day doing backbreaking labor for pennies. What did he have to offer her? How could he protect her if those men showed up? Pride and intense love sparked a fierce internal struggle. Toan made a choice. He had to crack the secret of the music box first. He needed a weapon to defend himself before he could rightfully take Diem's hand. The next morning, the mist was still thick. Toan woke up earlier than usual. He left some of yesterday's wages for the old lady, along with a note. The scribbled note read, "Heading into the district town for a few things. I'll be back soon to help you water the vegetables." Just as he reached the crest of the hill, Toan ran straight into Diem, coming from the opposite direction. She was out early to fetch water for the farm. They both stopped dead in their tracks, only 3 steps apart. This time, there was no scarf hiding her face, no blinding sun. Toan looked directly into Diem's eyes. Diem looked straight at Toan. It felt like an explosion. Their hearts beat in a synchronized rhythm of pure shock. But just as Diem opened her mouth to call his name, the roar of a high-powered motorcycle engine tore through the air from the distance. Two strangers in black leather jackets were speeding toward them. Huyen recognized the threat instantly. Without a word, he signaled Diem to duck into the thicket while he sprinted in the opposite direction to draw their fire. Once again, fate tore them apart at the very second they were about to reunite. One running to protect the other, left behind in tears and absolute terror. It's gut-wrenching to watch them separated again the moment they finally lock eyes. Fate is playing a deadly game of cat and mouse. Who are those two men on the bike? Are they the boss's henchmen, finally tracking them down to this remote corner of the world? Under the pale yellow sunset, Huyen's shadow stretched across the freshly tilled soil. His hands, once used to technical blueprints, were now marked with calluses and scratches from a brutal day of manual labor. As the last beads of sweat soaked into the earth, the old lady returned from the hill, carrying a load of dry firewood she had scavenged from the forest edge. Huyen dropped his hoe and rushed over to take the load from her. She gave him a toothless smile, her kind eyes scanning his dust-covered face. "Let's go inside, son. The mist is rolling in. You must be exhausted after a full day at the warehouse. Let me start the fire and get a hot meal going." The old lady's small kitchen was filled with the pungent smell of wood smoke, a scent of peace that Huyen now valued more than anything. He sat on the dirt floor, helping her stoke the fire. The sound of dry wood crackling joined the bubbling of the rice pot on the tripod stove. While waiting for the rice to cook, the two of them sat on the porch, looking out over the valley. Huyen remained silent, but his mind was a slow-motion replay of that touch at the warehouse. That scent, that feeling still lingered on his fingertips. "Ma'am," Huyen said softly, his voice dropping. "Do you believe that? If two people love each other, even if they're lost on opposite sides of the world, they'll eventually find their way back." The old lady paused her betel nut preparation, her gaze fixed on the purple clouds. "That's what we call debt, son. Some people meet just to settle old scores, but for others, the thread of fate is tied so tight that no matter how hard you pull, it won't break. It's just that the road back to each other is often full of thorns, just so people learn to cherish one another more." She looked deep into Huyen's eyes, as if she could see right through his turmoil. "You ran into someone today who made your heart ache, didn't you?" Huyen stiffened and didn't answer. He just looked down at his hands. He was afraid that if he admitted it, the longing would explode into a storm, and he'd lose control and run straight to Mr. Long's farm to find Diem. But his logic reminded him of the danger lurking in the shadows. Dinner was simple, boiled wild greens, a bowl of dipping sauce, and the caramelized pork Huyen had bought earlier. But in the stillness of the highlands, that simple meal felt incredibly warm. The old lady tucked the best piece of meat into Huyen's bowl. "Eat up, son. You need your strength. Life here isn't rich, but it's peaceful. Don't torture yourself over what's been lost." Huyen felt a lump in his throat, a stinging sensation in his nose as he took a bite. He told her about his day at the warehouse, the heavy sacks of pomelos, and the hard-working people he'd met. He kept the encounter with Diem to himself, but the old lady with the intuition of someone who had seen it all seemed to sense something. "You know Huyen," she said slowly after a sip of hot green tea. "Mr. Long next door is a good man, but he's got his share of secrets too. This valley looks peaceful, but it's a crossroads for some strange fates. Your arrival here, it wasn't an accident. Huyen set his bowl down, his heart racing. What do you mean by that? The old lady lowered her voice, the wind whistling through the bamboo walls like a forest whisper. There are people looking for you. I saw the men in big cars dressed in black lurking at the edge of the village since this afternoon. They aren't from around here. You need to watch your back. As the words left her mouth, a strange noise came from the fence. Huyen bolted upright, grabbing a wooden staff propped against the wall. His heart hammered against his ribs. Had they found him this quickly? But no. It was Mr. Long. He stepped inside, his expression grim and his breathing heavy. Huyen, come with me. Now, someone needs to see you. Mr. Long set his eyes darting behind him as if he were on lookout. Huyen glanced at the old lady. She gave him a small nod to go. He followed Mr. Long through the thick bamboo grove between the two properties. In the hazy darkness, Huyen spotted a figure waiting under a massive ancient tree at the farm's boundary. It was Officer Nam, but he wasn't alone. Standing beside him was a middle-aged man with a weathered face and an air of authority. It was Mr. Thu Diem's father. When he saw Huyen, Mr. Thu stepped forward. His eyes were bloodshot, but his voice remained steady. Huyen, I finally found you. Huyen froze. Memories of his father-in-law, the man who had always been kind, who had taught him the first lessons of integrity in architecture, came rushing back like a flood. He wanted to drop to his knees and apologize for the pain he'd caused their family, but Nam cut him off. Huyen, we don't have time for a sentimental reunion. The people behind Hung the Thug were at the warehouse this afternoon. That moment you and Diem touched. You weren't the only ones who noticed. They have an informant there. They recognized you. Huyen went pale. What about Diem? Is she okay? She's being protected at Mr. Long's farm. But we need you. Nam said, locking eyes with Huyen. The music box and the hard drive inside it are the only pieces of evidence that can put the boss away for good. If you don't step up, not just you, but Diem and the entire Thu family will be in danger forever. Huyen looked back at the old lady's stilt house where the oil lamp flickered lonely in the dark, and then toward Mr. Long's farm where Thu Diem was. He realized then that the peace he had tried to build with the sweat of his brow was nothing more than a castle built on sand. Fate's twisted game didn't stop at making him brush past Diem at the warehouse. It was forcing him into the eye of the storm to protect that very love. I'll do it. Huyen set his voice like cold steel. But I have one condition. Let me see Diem. Just once before we put this plan in motion. Mr. Thu looked at his son-in-law and gave a subtle nod. In the pitch-black darkness of the highlands, a high-stakes psychological game began to take shape. The threads of destiny were tightening, preparing for an explosion of truth and justice. Huyen's dinner with the old lady seemed peaceful, but it was actually the calm before the biggest storm of their lives. The strangers have arrived, and the truth behind Huyen's disappearance has become the epicenter of a breathtaking manhunt. What will Huyen do now that he knows he's the only target capable of toppling the boss? And how will the secret meeting between Huyen and Thu Diem at the farm go tonight, after so many days apart? And those bitter, near-miss encounters. Smash that like button if you're holding your breath following every twist and turn of this story. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. A Kiss in the Dark and the Race Against Death. Who do you think the boss really is? A total stranger, or perhaps a close friend from Toan's past? Drop your theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next part. It's going to be more intense than ever.